Welcome to Chalk Talk, a weekly preview of West Tennessee football featuring the Jackson Sun sports team here on JacksonSun.com.
Welcome into JacksonSun.com for the Chalk Talk, the college edition for week 2 of the college football season. I am Sun Sports Editor Brandon Shields here with our local college sports writer Craig Thomas. And Craig, I guess with the 4 teams that play on this end of the state, that play football on this end of the state, I guess kind of the most interesting matchup of the 4 this week is the road trip that UTM's got.
Yeah, they're going to be going to Boise, Idaho. It's the first time they've been on a plane as a team in 5 years, so before any of these guys were on the team. Actually the longest road trip for the UTM football team in school history, so they'll be taking on Boise State, a team that's basically the team when you look at FBS teams that aren't in a BCS automatic qualifying conference. Boise State's won a couple of Fiesta Bowls in the last 10 years. They've won, seems like 10 or 11 games almost every season. Chris Peterson's been the head coach since '06 and has done a really, really good job making them a program to be, I guess, admired in a sense, just with the success that they've had.
Boise State didn't have a great start, losing 38-6 to unranked Washington this past week. Is there any sense there that maybe UTM's got a chance to surprise a lot of people with this game?
Well, I think there's probably an increasing sense this week. 1, given Boise State's loss, 2, given UTM's win over Chattanooga, and 3, given how many FCS teams beat FBS teams last week. There were a handful. Eastern Illinois, out of UTM's own conference, got a huge win against an FBS school. So I think there's probably a little bit more of a sense that it's possible. But I mean, Boise State almost never ever loses at home. I mean, that's just the thing. The last few years, they've they just really don't lose at home hardly ever. And I think they've got more good players than UT Martin does, and so that's not to be overlooked. It's going to be a real challenge for UT Martin, but they obviously looked about as good as you would hope last week against Chattanooga, and I think they're motivated to show that they are a named program in FCS.
Speaking of trying to look good, Bethel's coming out this week, hoping to look better on their road trip into Kentucky, or at least hoping to look better than they did last week in their opener against William Penn.
Yeah, Bethel had a pretty disastrous opener against William Penn. It was supposed to be the NAIA game of the week. Didn't work out that way at all. A couple of ranked teams, but William Penn certainly looked the part. Bethel did not, getting beat 34-8. The offense was pretty limited all day. The defense didn't play well. They were out there way too long. Like Chris Elliott said it well, they've got issues all across the board right now. You can't really just pinpoint one thing. So I think Bethel needs to just kind of get out of Carroll County, get a little change of scenery, get a little bit better this week. Whether they win or not, they need a better performance, I think, for just sort of mental confidence. They had a rough start last year, sort of bounced back, or they did bounce back throughout the rest of the season, and I think you have to look to do that again.
All right, and then another team that has to go on a road trip this week is Lane, as they'll be headed out of Jackson and into Virginia.
Yeah, Lane and Virginia Lynchburg don't play often. They're not real familiar with each other, so this game may just come down to who's kind of more prepared for a good season in week 1. Chris Reaney and Mackenzie Marbury are the 2 quarterback candidates. If Coach Derek Burrows knows who's going to be the guy, he's not saying. But he is planning on using just 1 quarterback, so not planning on a dual quarterback system. But in any case, defense should be a pretty good strength for Lane. They've got a strong returner in Jack Howard in the secondary. They got a new defensive lineman named Gabriel Mass they're really excited about. And so Coach Burrows being a former NFL defensive back, I know that means a lot to him to have a physical, tough defense. And I think he seemed like he was pretty pleased with their progress to this point.
There is actually one team on this end of the state that is not going into another time zone to play their Week 2 game. Memphis opens up at the Liberty Bowl on Saturday against Duke.
I think this has to be one of the more anticipated season openers for Memphis in quite some time. Obviously, they made some major growth under Justin Fuente in his first year last year. From the beginning of the season, the end of the season, there was no question they were a much better football team. And I think the Memphis fans are really, really interested to see if they can be competitive in a different conference. It's a more difficult schedule this year, no doubt about it. And Duke laid a thumping on them last year. That'll be the season opener this time around. They've got a new quarterback in Paxton Lynch. Big 6'6" guy, throws really hard. The Memphis players on Monday when I visited down there were talking about just how hard he throws. You have to kind of get ready for it. That was what Brandon Hayes, the running back there, said. So I mean, there's just much more stability and much more certainty around Memphis football. Not as much as there needs to be yet, but there's just a lot more reason I think for people to be excited and optimistic about what they can do this year.
All right, well, be sure to check JacksonSun.com all day on Saturday for updates from these games and games all across the country. I know a lot of people are going to be wanting to keep up with Tennessee and Vanderbilt's games this week as well. So we'll have all that, SEC covered, top 25, local colleges as well. We're your number one source for college football in West Tennessee. And just keep reading the Jackson Sun Sunday's paper, as well as following Craig on Twitter at JS Writer Craig, and following myself, JS Editor Brandon, for constant updates from your local teams.